Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwan, and today we're going to be talking about another Space Marine chapter known as the Exorcist. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K lore videos every single day. If you guys have any suggestions, please comment down below. Don't forget to hit the little bell notification icon to stay updated to see if we actually created a video for you. And thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. But with all of that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Exorcist chapter. The Exorcists were created during the 13th founding, the so-called Dark Founding, which occurred sometime between the 35th and the 36th millennia, before the start of the Age of Apostasy. The Exorcists were founded as part of a highly classified Imperial experiment to create Space Marines who are unusually resistant to demonic possession and chaotic corruption. The Exorcist's original chapter color included yellow power armor. The right shoulder guard was yellow with a checkered pattern bordered for the trim. The left shoulder guard was a dark purple color and had bonding studs fastened to it. The then standard Mark VI helmet was also colored yellow, with a black triangle pattern over the mouth of the helmet's beak. The eye lenses were red and the backpack was colored black. The Exorcist's current chapter colors include red power armor with black trim. Veterans of the chapter often have white trims and wear helmets that are colored white to mark their senior status. The Elite First Company wear red Terminator power armor with black shoulder guards instead of the standard red. The Exorcist Battle Brothers commonly have etched sigils and engraved hexagrammic wards incorporated into their power armor and their personal weapons to help protect themselves and ward off the corrupting influence of warp entities. The Exorcist's original chapter badge was a dark brown colored, leering horned devil's head with red eyes. The Exorcist's current chapter badge is a simple bone-white horned skull on a red background. The Exorcist chapter Homeworld is the ancient Furrow world known as Banish, which lies within the borders of the Narisma Straits, a quarantine sector of space on the eastern fringe of the Milky Way galaxy and the Ultima Segmentum. The planet serves as the chapter's primary training facility and armory, with their fortress monastery, the Basilica Malefax, housing their gene seed stores and apothecarion, as well as a vast archive of occult lore on the nature of chaos and the demonic. Banish also houses several secret Ordo Malleus research facilities under the Exorcist's protection. The Exorcists are only the second known Space Marine chapter to have been created during the 13th founding, alongside the equally mysterious Death Specters. The exact nature and origin of the gene seed used in the Exorcist creation has remained classified by a special bull absolute of the Inquisitorial representatives of the High Lords of Terra. This mysterious but noble chapter is at once the epitome of the values of the Adeptus Astartes and an enigma. Many speculate that they are in fact the only successor chapter of the revered Grey Knights. What is known is that the Exorcists have maintained a long-standing link to the Inquisition. Some have even whispered that they are intimately involved with certain factions of the secretive Ordo Malleus. It is most likely that the unique character of this chapter has been greatly influenced by the sponsorship and design of the Inquisitorial Ordos, and the Inquisition may well have ordered the chapter's creation, either as a grand experiment or for more singular purposes. The chapter was created through secret Inquisitorial experiments in which test subjects were deliberately allowed to be possessed by demons, before the demon was banished by the Ordo Malleus Inquisitors. There were casualties, but the majority of the test subjects survived and emerged unusually skilled in the ways of combatant demon kind, as the Inquisition had hoped. This has also caused the subject to have no psychic signature that psychers could detect. The original test subjects, some 2 companies strong, about 200 Space Marines, were released onto a demon-infested planet where they displayed extremely impressive results, achieving a kill ratio of 97-1. Following this test, the Exorcist chapter was fully chartered and allowed to begin recruiting until it had reached its full required strength of about 1,000 Astartes, all of whom were subject to the same test of demonic possession before becoming a full neophyte of the chapter. The Exorcists are regarded as the Codex Astartes compliant chapter, with a great deal of their organizational, structural, and tactical operations adhering to the tenets of the Astartes' holiest of tomes. Much of the chapter's common practices, insignia, honors, and basic tactical doctrines is based closely on the Ultramarines and their successor chapters. There are, however, several noteworthy and substantial deviations from the Codex Astartes. The Exorcists are composed of a total of 12 companies, as opposed to the standard 10. The 10th, 11th, and 12th company consist entirely of neophyte scout marines. The reason for this high number of scouts is the highly unorthodox and dangerous training practices used by the chapter, which some believe may even include controlled exposure to warp entities and demonic possession before a neophyte can become a full battle brothers, just as was done by the chapter's original Astartes by the Inquisition. If such practices are employed, then the chaotic corruption and fatality rates would be extremely high for the Exorcist initiates, requiring a high influx of new recruits, hence the need to maintain 3 companies of scout marines. There exist within the Exorcist ranks certain exocentric subcults, which dedicate themselves to particular fields of expertise and knowledge, known as orisons. On the battlefield, many of these orisons manifest themselves amongst the various chapters and squad divisions, while their inner circles are primarily made up of the chapter's veterans and other high-ranking battle brothers and officers. Acceptance within one or more of these subcults is a mark of high regard within the chapter, and membership in one does not preclude one from involvement in another. Perhaps the most elite of these orisons is known as the Enochian Guard, named after the chapter's legendary first chapter master, Enoch Trismegistus, and is composed entirely of veterans from the chapter's first company who usually fight as Terminators. The character of the Exorcist is known to be studious, intelligent, highly honorable, and above all, calm outside the battle. But in war, they undergo a transformation into an uncommonly aggressive force of Astartes. As a chapter steeped in the understanding of chaos, and an unusual immunity to this temptation, from the moment of each Astartes' full acceptance into the chapter, the Exorcists are always at risk of pursuing what the Inquisitions would classify as radical solutions to certain problems, including the use of chaotic weapons and strategies against the forces of the archenemy. Even at its purest, the Exorcists are a chapter who will often choose a pragmatic solution to a given problem, rather than remain committed to an orthodoxy of imperial doctrines. As such, the Exorcists retain close links with the Inquisition, both for tactical reasons and so that the Ordo Malleus may maintain a close watch on this most unusual and potentially dangerous of Astartes chapters. Another area in which the Exorcists differ from many other brother chapters is their cultivation and propagation of forbidden knowledge. The Exorcists are highly intelligent and rational, and each Astartes is steeped in the lore of the demon and the warp. Each is said to know numerous wards and can recite the most powerful of demon-slaying texts. The teachings of the chapter's cult focus heavily on defeating the works of the demonic, though it must be said that the chapter is nowhere near as specialized as the secretive Grey Knights, and regularly faces the entire spectrum of the Imperium's foes. Nonetheless, the Exorcists are specially adept at combating the denizens of the warp, and this is a manifest in another of the chapter's practices. As spoken of before, the chapter cult is divided into a number of subcults known as orisons. Each serves a lodge of warrior mystics within the chapter, the members of each privy to a particular specialized branch of demonic lore. When facing a threat that is the domain of a specific orison, the group may be gathered together to confront it or counsel others in doing so. The orisons are not standing tactical formations, and their existence does not contravene the dictates of the Codex Astartes, but they do allow the chapter to focus specialized knowledge quickly and efficiently, and thus defeat the servants of the ruinous powers. Given their nature, it is perhaps inevitable that the Exorcists should maintain close ties to various bodies within the Inquisition. While it is far from unusual for chapters to have special links with individual inquisitors, or with particular conclaves or other groups, the Exorcists go one step further. The chapter's Homeworld of Banish hosts several facilities belonging to the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus. If half of the suspicions regarding the Exorcist indoctrination processes are true, then it is possible that these allied Inquisitors and their servants adhere to one of the more radical factions within the Ordos, for no Puritan would concede such practices. The chapter shows a high degree of adaptability and unpredictability in battle, both in terms of tactics and weapons its Astartes employ. When an enemy counters one tactic used by the Exorcist, The chapter plans accordingly, adapts and changes strategy, enabling them to outmaneuver their enemies and catch them completely off guard. Exorcist Astartes are known to utilize certain occult mental arts to enter an almost trance-like state of higher consciousness, which allows them to become completely devoid of fear and pain, even when confronted by the sanity-destroying horrors of the warp. This capacity is not unknown amongst the Space Marines, but the extent to which the Exorcists are able to employ these techniques to distance themselves from physical and spiritual hardships and continue to operate has become legendary. Exorcist Battle Brothers are also masters of arcane lore concerning chaos and the demonic, on a level unseen in other chapters and unrivaled in the Imperium, except by the Grey Knights and the Ordo Malleus itself. They are particularly adept at recognizing the work of the demon and know how to combat them. To enable themselves to spiritually ward their arms and equipment against chaotic influence, it is said that each battle brother must master the use of 666 verses of the Ordo Malleus's Libra Exorcism, sunder the 7 seals of Solomonth, and become adept at the use of incursal hexagrams. This degree of forbidden and dark knowledge is cause for grave suspicion of the chapter by those within the ecclesiarchy, as well as certain Space Marine chapters, with fervent hatred of witchcraft of any kind, even when wielded by the servants of the Emperor, such as the Space Wolves and the Black Templars. In contrast, the Exorcists have an unusually strong political alliance with the Inquisition, especially compared to the normal friction between Adeptus Astartes and the Ordos, so they face fewer difficulties or obstacles than any other chapter when dealing with the imperial bureaucracy of the High Lords of Terra. One of the most notable campaigns undergone by the Exorcist chapter is the Ashen War in the 300th year of the 41st millennium. The Ashen War was a series of brushfire revolts and chaos incursions that erupted across the Ashen subsector, after a bloody chaos cult uprising on the cardinal world of Dimimar exposed how overstretched imperial control over the surrounding region had become. Slowly stripped of much of its defenses over the course of several generations to provide for the needs of other conflicts nearby, this border region was ill-equipped to stave off catastrophe when it came. Very rapidly, a three-way war developed between the beleaguered imperial protectors of the Ashen Worlds, Chaos Cultists who had converted several planetary defense garrisons to their cause, and Orc marauders pouring across the border from the adjacent Bloodmaw cluster. The Imperial counter-invasion was led by the combined force of 2 Space Marine chapters, the Exorcists and the Dark Hands, backed by the Necromundan 54th and 60th Imperial Guard Rifles, and the Battle Sisters of the Order of the Valorous Heart. The Exorcists quickly realized that one of the keys to victory would be locating and destroying the single Dark Master of many names. It lurked behind the divergent chaos cults in the region, a demonic creature that on Dimimar was known as the Horned God, a thing of shadow and malice. The Horned God was a master of hellish pacts who had become engorged on the souls its servants had slaughtered. When the Exorcist finally cornered the Demon Prince in the maze-like pre-human ruins of the dead world of Belphago, it was attended by a guard of 1,000 of its fanatical followers and several warbands of Night Lord's Chaos Space Marines it had bound in its will. What followed was one of the hardest fought and costly actions in the chapter's history. The Exorcist, with the aid of a hastily composed Ordo Malleus strike team, fought their way through the suicidal attack waves of cultists and the skillful ambush and vicious assault of the Night Lords before confronting the blackening, burning demon that served the Horned God. In a final titanic struggle amid the fallen ruins of the Xenos Temple to the Dark Gods older than history of mankind, the Exorcist's elite Enochian Guard and a handful of surviving Inquisitors and their acolytes confronted the Lord of Shadows in all his blasphemous and unholy glory. Shrugging off shot, shell, and energy blast, the Dark Beast slashed through the Exorcist ranks, shearing Terminator-clad warriors in half with ease, and ripping asunder the demon hosts of Inquisitor Grey before devouring their master whole. The Exorcists refused to retreat from the horror that confronted them, despite their losses, and slowly the weight of their attack began to take a toll. The turning point of the battle came when one of the chapter's dreadnoughts, the venerable Cybra, sacrificed himself to rip a great chunk off the demon prince's smoldering body and expose its blazing heart. This noble act allowed the Exorcists to press their attack while the demon reeled in agony. With a daring lunge, Librarian Malachite pierced the foul heart with his forespear. The weapon severed the demon's connection with the mortal plane, finally vanquishing it. As the demon prince's cries of rage and frustration echoed into eternity, all across the Ashen subsector, those who had bartered their souls for a measure of the Horn God's power paid the price and were consumed by black flames, shattering the power of chaos revolts. A full third of the Exorcist chapter had perished, but the tide of war was now in the Imperium's favor, and within a year, the subsector was brought back under Imperial control. Yet another notable campaign fought by the Exorcist chapter occurred in the 740th year of the 41st millennium, known as the Relief of Stonecrawl. The Relief of Stonecrawl was the defense of the minor frontier world of Stonecrawl, within the realm of Ultramar and the Ultima Segmentum, from a small incursion of the Tyranids of High Fleet Behemoth. A scheduled trader vessel, the Nostros Vex, appeared 3 weeks overdue and drifting, seemingly lifeless, at the edge of the Stonecrawl system, and it was investigated by vessels sent out from a small Imperial colony in the system. This heralded the beginning of a nightmare for the colonists of Stonecrawl. Soon, a rapidly multiplying infestation of High Fleet Behemoth's gene stealers broke out, and in an ever-growing plague, the horrific creatures hacked through the scattered settlements of Stonecrawl, like the butcher's cleaver through raw meat. Alone and realizing their astropathic distress calls were unlikely to be unanswered, the remaining Stonecrawl colonists did their best to gather their few weapons together and mount a defense, determined to sell their lives dearly if they could. When all seemed lost, and only the last major settlements remained, all that was left for the terrified men and women cowering behind feudal barricades was to pray for deliverance to the God Emperor. Yet that deliverance came as deep Crimson Thunderhawk gunships descended on plumes of fire above them. The Exorcist Spacemarine Chapter's third company, driven off course by the Tyranid psychic shadow in the warp, had heard the colony's cries for help. Their strike cruiser, Hand of Glory, having already slain 2 encroaching void krakens in the outer system, now offloaded its complement of Space Marines to make a stand on Stonecrawl's broken ground. The battles that followed were swift but furious, the Gene Stealers first seeking to infiltrate by stealth, only to be met by the firepower of the Exorcist Astartes waiting for them. The Tyranid broods quickly shifted tactics and sought to overwhelm their foe in a whirlwind of fangs and claws. Inured as they were to the terrors of the warp, even these nightmarish Xenos, although deadly beyond measure, held little fear for the Exorcist Space Marines. With near clinical efficiency, the Space Marines set up interlocking fields of fire to trap their attackers into prepared killing zones, in order to blunt the Gene Stealers' advantage in speed and numbers. Meanwhile, the Exorcist's potent librarian, Castor Mackin, sought out the Synap creatures present within the brood and scoured them to ashes with soul fire. The people of Stonecrawl survived thanks to the Exorcist's efforts, a small victory perhaps in the grand scheme of the greater battle against the High Fleet, but a victory nonetheless. After action testimony taken by the Ordo Xenos investigators recorded the fearful awe the surviving colonists felt for their saviors, and many spoke of how the sound of baleful litanies the Exorcists chanted during battle still echoed in their dreams. The Exorcist chapter participated in the latter stages of the Badab War, led by Silas Alberic, the famed Exorcist Third Company captain and heir designate to the command of the chapter. The Exorcists intervened in the conflict once the secessionists had been declared excommunicate traitorous in the year 908 of the 41st millennium. Alberic, huge in stature even for a Space Marine, gained great fame and recognition for himself in the Badab War, leading his Space Marines in several noteworthy engagements. The first of these was the taking of the armed merchantman Soyuz Maru during the Second Battle of Sagan. and the last was the bloody attack on the vital and heavily defended Sentinel Sigma station during the fall of Badab Primaris. In this latter battle, Alberic wielded the Hellslayer power mace to great effect, rapidly smashing his way through the armored bulkhead while under heavy fire from the Astroclaws. Alberic slew the Astroclaws chaplain, Arkil Lionsmane, in personal combat, despite still suffering from grievous wounds earned in prior battles. The Exorcist's otherwise exemplary role in the Badab War was tarnished when their blockade of the Badab system failed in the confusion of the final hours of the siege, as anarchy reigned on the surface of Badab Primaris after the Carcharodons fired the reactors of the world's hive cities and started a chain reaction that would doom the planet. In the scramble to flee the surface, both loyalists and secessionists struggled to escape in any spacecraft they could commandeer. In the confusion that followed, the Exorcist fired on and in some cases destroyed any vessel that could not prove itself to be an ally, unfortunately slaying many fellow loyalists in the process. To make matters worse, a vessel containing many Astartes from Huron's inner circle escaped the blockade in the confusion, carrying the badly wounded but still living form of their master into the Maelstrom, who would later return to plague the Imperium once more as Huron Blackheart, the Chaos Lord who commanded the tyrannical warband of Chaos Spacemarines, who called themselves the Red Corsairs. In another notable campaign, Inquisitor Lord Cote of the Ordo Malleus led planet-wide exorcisms of Orpidia, casting out millions of demon hosts and slaying the demon prince Carpathai. Crucial to the Inquisitor's victory was the deployment of the second company of the Exorcist chapter, whose librarians enacted rites of detestation unknown outside of their chapter's cult. The Exorcists have in their possessions various relics, one of which is the Serpent Staff of Zavazius, a forestaff formerly carried by the famed Exorcist Epistolary, Zavazius. This weapon was as much a symbol of office as a potent weapon, through which he was able to focus his arcane powers. This master-crafted weapon was created for him by the finest artificers of the chapter, a weapon thought long lost with a trace of the epistolary himself. The so-called Serpent Staff resides in Watch Fortress Erico in the Jericho Reach, set into a niche with Sabaziu's cell when the epistolary disappeared during his last mission. Legends state that at the very moment of its owner's descent into the raging fires of the crater on the world of Androconus Prime, the staff came alive in its resting place, its rigid form twisting like that of a reptile, an event that earned it its name. Though the transformation was only temporary and witnessed by the Deathwatch chapter serfs, it was later declared a genuine phenomenon. The Serpent Staff was transplanted from its resting place in the cell of the lost epistolary and placed within the catacombs of Erico, along with countless other relics of the Long Watch. Within a day, however, the staff was found to be missing, and following an exhaustive search, it was discovered in its original resting place, in the niche in its former owner's cell. Since that time, the Serpent Staff of Sabazius has been carried into battle by numerous subsequent generations of Deathwatch librarians. Several have fallen in battle while carrying it, and in at least 3 known instances, the staff has somehow returned to its resting place even when its bearer's body was unrecovered. The staff was even returned to the Exorcist chapter itself at one time, yet a standard year later it was found back in its niche on Erico. As a result, the former cell of Epistolary Sabazius has been declared sacred ground, and it is maintained as a shrine to the fallen hero. And those were 40 facts on the Exorcist chapter. Now, you guys in the Greater Wall episodes have always been asking us, or I guess a lot of people have been asking us, has there ever been a Space Marine chapter that is just full of blanks? And these guys are it. You still have librarians, which is kind of funny, kind of just bizarre, I guess. But I mean, it is what it is. If you guys have any suggestions for any other Space Marine chapters that we have not covered, please comment down in the comment section below. This is we decided to put these two videos together because we had two videos on the Exorcist, so we wanted to clump them together so you guys can see. And there's a lot of new guys out there, or gals that are out there, and sometimes these videos just kind of get lost through our library of videos, so we wanted to repost this to you guys just so that you have it. Now, if you guys enjoy our content, it is because of our patrons that we can do this. Link in the description if you guys want to support us. It's a simple $1 a month. If you guys don't want to support us on Patreon, we understand. Liking, commenting, and sharing, it helps out the channel. Commenting down in the comment section below also helps the channel, so thank you for that. If you guys want to get some cool stuff, we are selling some objective markers. There is a link in the description that takes you to the website. We only created 30. I think there's only 25 left. Once they're gone, they're gone. But this is like One Mind Syndicate merch or close to it. They're just objective markers that you could use on the tabletop. Even if you don't play, they're kind of cool and fun to have. And if you ever wanted to paint some minis, this is an excellent chance for you. But thank you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. This was Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.